Okay, this is week 10, and we're recording this to the cloud. This is supposed to be a week on like ecosystems or something like that. New technology challenges in education for new learning ecosystems. I'm going to talk about something that's not exactly a new ecosystem. It's sort of been around for a while, but it's like immersive worlds that Jill's interested in. It comes and goes. It comes and goes every 5 years, or it's like blended learning. For a couple of years, it's really people are excited about it, and then all of a sudden they're not excited about it, and then they are, and then they're not. Ebooks are the same thing. Since I was in graduate school a long, long time ago in the Stone Age, people have been interested in ebooks. And in 2009, when my World is Open book came out, I had that as one of the 10 openers, and it happened to be the key year for ebooks. 2009 was what's called the bellwether year, or the year that we hit the tipping point, as Malcolm Gladwell would say. And then when we hit the tipping point, everybody's interested in ebooks and doing ebooks, but they have to understand whether or not we're saving money, whether, cost effectiveness, whether they can access them and maintain the rights to access after they depart your class. There's other issues. Do the technologies go well beyond the student capabilities, right? Are students comfortable using ebooks? Is this display proper? Are there tools embedded in these ebooks that facilitate student learning? I was on the board of a company that was guillotining books. They said, Dr. Bonk, we got your book. Really nice book. We cut it off and we scanned it into our optical reader. They were working for this gigantic startup company called Net Library. If you can look up Net Library, maybe you can see if you can find, they burned through $100 million just like that. And I worked for a derivative of them, or a subsidiary of them. They came out of Purdue. Someone at Purdue developed some tools to enhance books, to web enhance books. Like having a simulation within a book, like having animations in a book, like having a participatory book so that students could converse about the book, right? And so I was working for this, I think it was called Metatext, and they were out of Boulder, Colorado. It was really fun to go into Boulder and hang out with these folks and talk about new possibilities for learning. There's also a company called ThoughtShare, and if you're into Star Trek, Vulcan mind melds, the ThoughtShare, I'll share my thoughts and with you and just, but no, that's not what ThoughtShare did. ThoughtShare looked at students' paths or people's paths when they traverse the web, and you could share your paths with each other. And as you cruise on down the nodes, the hyperlinks, old nodes become grayed out, kind of like getting gray hair or yellowed out. ThoughtShare out of Vancouver. So I was involved in a couple early startup companies, helping them out as kind of like a thought provoker or a thought leader, I guess, in some ways, but maybe just they felt sorry for me and grabbed me and put me on the board and gave me a little bit of money. But then when the dot-com crash hit, all those companies kind of went belly up. And there are a few consulting gigs that I did I've never paid for because they had no money. And so that's fine. I learned a lot. I hung out with some really smart and cool people. But now that ThoughtShare idea, I saw in Australia, a similar company, a startup company, maybe a year or two ago. I'm not going to talk about any of this stuff. And the last time I presented on this 2 years ago, I had 200 slides and I didn't get through it all, right? So what did I try and do tonight? I was going to wean these down to less than 200, but instead I built them up to about almost 300. So I'm going to be going through a lot of different things. I kept all my old slides. I put a whole bunch of new slides in. I want to get to the new stuff, but I think the history is important here. So for the first 25 minutes, I want to go through some of the history. So Bo, at 6:30, let me know when I've tapped into the time allotted. And I'll move into the new stuff, including my article that I helped with, meta-analysis or systematic review of all the research on ebooks, which I think is illuminating somewhat. I have put my slides in Dropbox. I have put a PDF, 6 slides per page, in Dropbox just before class. Hopefully they showed up there. I put it up 10 minutes ago. I literally finished adding to all these 10 minutes ago. And, you know, high hopes, high hopes, high hopes, high hopes to be done with this morning, but they're in there now. And somebody's in the wait room. We got her in. Okay, so we have 13 people. Great. And Jeff's with us virtually. I think Jeff's on a mobile or in his car. Thanks for joining, Jeff. He's a former student of mine in Boston, drinking green beer today and yesterday. He still has a few left. Did anybody get a green beer yesterday? Raise your hands. I'm just curious if anyone had a chance. No green beer, people? Are you becoming more green? No, you're hopefully this class is moving you from being green and naive to very well informed about emerging learning technologies. My hope. So tonight I'm going to do a lecture. I'm going to do another one in a couple of weeks on open education and about 8 studies that I've done in the past couple of years related to MOOCs and open education. I'm going to have Dr. Sam Naidu come in from, I don't think he's in Fiji anymore. I don't think he's in Sri Lanka anymore. I think he's in Melbourne. And he's going to talk about his special issue on open education and open universities. I might, in turn, lecture after he presents and leaves, or I might do it the week before he does. I haven't decided when I will do that. I'm also going to talk about my new study on online proctoring and the whole special issue about online assessment in week 14. And we're going to have 3 or 4, I think, of the contributors of that special issue going to join us in week 14. In week 15, we're going to have people like Kirsten Eberts, who came to me tonight. Is Kirsten here? I don't think she's here. She's got a great idea for doing a press book on open education resources, and she's going to present her ideas. I think Masa in Japan has a great idea for his project. He's going to hopefully present his ideas in here too. I encourage all of you to present in week 15 for maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes, your final projects, so we can all learn from you. If you need more than 5 or 10 minutes, write me an email and say, Dr. Bonk, it's going to take me 15, or it's going to take me 20 minutes. And, you know, write me ahead of time so I can schedule it, okay? Can I jump into my slides, or does anyone have a pressing question? You should all have task 2 and task 3 back in your hands, right? And that means you only have task 4 and task 5 in addition to weekly task 1 discussions. And those are due in mid-April at some point. And you always have a 2-day grace. And if you need an extra 3rd day grace or 4th day grace, I can happily provide that because I cannot grade everything at once. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and it's good to see everybody back here again after a couple weeks not being with us. Okay, let me jump in and see if I can find them. There we go. And again, I'm going to say that some of this is brand new. And some of this I just grabbed from websites from the journals that these are published in. And so this is not a practice talk. I haven't been sitting around in my basement practicing this. So some of this is going to be disjointed, but hopefully you can learn a lot from it, because there's a lot of characters in here at the beginning. And some of these characters, if you've read My World is Open book, you'll recognize them because I discussed them in chapter 3, which is on open books. And actually, some of these people I talk in chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6. They're pretty famous folks, okay? So this is called The Evolution of Digital and Open Textbooks, and OER. OER, Open Education Resources, is almost synonymous with ebooks. Because why would people want OER? They want to save money on books. Books cost too much, right? Today, we've got a big news that costs of homes are going to come down because these realtors who've been ripping us off 6% right and left are not going to be paid 6% anymore. Well, people want costs reduced, right? People are worried about inflation, right? They're worried about tuition fees. But books is a big part of the expense of higher education today. So this topic is something that you don't just learn in this class. In fact, I didn't even assign it as a week in this class. This is something you'll talk to your mother and father and brother and sister and so forth, cousins, nephews, on and on and on. People are very interested in this topic. But in honesty, aspects of what I'm going to talk about tonight are rather boring because they're all about money and kind of like you're going to hear the same thing repeated over and over and over and over. Oh, this article came out, the fear of missing out. Everybody wants to get into this industry because there's a fear of missing out, this multi-billion-dollar industry, right? Many entities have sprung up. Oh, when I taught this class in 2005, almost 20 years ago, the Global Text Project came out in Georgia. There's a professor in business school at Georgia who is helping third world countries out by getting all sorts of people to write books and make them available all around the world, right? And so this became fairly popular for a while. In fact, my tech variety book, I put up in the open textbook, Global Open Text Project. I'm not sure if that still exists. Bo can look this up and see if the Global Text Project still exists. It might not be from Georgia. It might be from somewhere else, but I don't quite know. But that was an early start. There were actually projects before this because open education really sprung around 2001, 2002, 2003 with UNESCO projects and so forth. My good friend Terry Anderson, he was a guest in this class 2 years ago. He retired from Athabasca University, which is the Open University of Canada. Oh, Canada. Anyways, Terry met me on the escalator in Edmonton, oh no, Edinburgh, in Scotland. He was going up, I was coming down. I jumped back on his side just to chat with him. We are at a conference. It's basically like AECT for us, for the UK. And it's a learning and technologies conference. And I kind of stuck in. I was on sabbatical. And I talked to him. I says, Terry, your book is great. It has all these downloads, 55,000 downloads the first year because he made it free. He said, Curt, if I made this book for paid, I'd only sell 800 copies. Why do I want to make minuscule royalties on 800 copies when I can get tens of thousands? And actually in year 2, he had hundreds of thousands. And then in year 3, he created a new version of the book. And so it's called Theory and Practice of Online Learning. And he was my role model then at the time. And 10 years later, I had a free book, the Tech Variety book. And now 2 years ago, the follow-up to that book, or a year and a half ago, the follow-up to that book. So Terry Anderson is a big name in the area of in teaching presence, cognitive presence, and social presence. If you read about community of inquiry model, you'll read Terry Anderson. If you go to the old monster syllabus, you'll read from Terry Anderson. So he's one of the people, his mentor, Randy Garrison at the University of Calgary, and Terry, the two of them worked together on kind of looking at how Deweyan psychology is alive and well within these online discourse spaces. Then the governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the governor of California, when he was the governor, he said, well, we've got a $32 billion budget deficit, and we're going to terminate textbooks. And that's what the goal was to create ebooks for all K-12 schools. And it would save them not $1 million, not $10 million, not $500 million. The goal was to save $2 billion and put them on the road to recovery, because 20 years ago, California had a huge deficit. Unlike today, I think they're doing quite fine there today. So he was the Terminator, terminating textbooks. You might recognize him from the movie Terminator. And so, yeah, the future begins, okay? This guy is also in California. He's in San Francisco. He's pretty well known. If you get the New Yorker, a couple of years ago, there's a great article on him in the Internet Archive. It's called The Cobweb. You can look up, look up The Cobweb, C-O-B-W-E-B, one word. It might be in the tidbits. Some of you might have read that in the tidbits. What he's trying to do is index the entire internet, the entire web every day. So if something's posted on me that's disingenuous on March 17, you can erase it on March 18th, but actually you can go back because he's saved every single day and prove that someone did something to you or said something about you that wasn't correct, right? So he's trying to put the entire web available. And there's been political reasons why he thought about moving the organization from San Francisco to Canada during these kind of difficult political times to save the Internet Archive. He hasn't, I don't think, but it would be an interesting stop if you go to San Francisco sometimes and go visit and see what that's like. He was a guy who made a lot of money in the early days of the Internet. and he used that money to found and help co-found the Internet Archive. So it's something, it's called the Wayback Machine. Some of you may have heard the Wayback Machine, where you can go back in time and look up what things look like. Well, you have Brewster Cayley to thank for that, along with Aaron Swartz and others. That's the Cobweb article you can take a look at. Aaron Swartz, unfortunately, I spelled his name wrong in The World is Open book. Unfortunately, he committed suicide when the FBI was after him for sharing articles. He took a whole dump of articles from MIT and other places and made them available free to the world. And somebody thought they could make a name for themselves by putting him in jail and putting him under arrest and move up within the FBI or something like that. And Aaron Swartz knew that the FBI was coming after him, and he hung himself with his belt or something like that. Anyways, I had a chance to talk to him before he did that. He was 14 years old when he created Reddit and RSS feeds. You may have heard of Reddit. It's going public right now. But he created RSS feeds as a 14-year-old in Chicago, and then created the indexing system for Brewster Cayley's project, the kind of a wiki-based indexing system as a teenager. This guy was really smart, but almost was too smart. And it's unfortunate that he isn't around today to fulfill some of his mission. And you can read the article about the prosecutor being a bully and bullying him just to try and make a name for themselves. Marissa Mayer, someone who's from Wisconsin like me, she created Google Earth, Google Desktop, Google Toolbar, Gmail, Google News. But the one thing that's most important is she created the Google Book Project, scanning in books so that we could have free books available from all the libraries of the world whenever we wanted in multiple languages, right? And here's the machine that they did that. They scanned in these books and made them available. And you can see the woman there with the hands there. She put her hand on one of the pages. So for 100 years from now, when you open up the book, Darwin's Evolution of the Species, you will see her hand there, because it'll be, that's what the scan was for Darwin's Evolution of the Species. Anyways, nice, you can go into these libraries now and order a book and they'll print it out using these machines. You can go off and get coffee in Starbucks and come back and your book will be available for you. So they can go reverse they can go from physical to digital, but also from digital to physical. And again, that's the machine there, and that's the guy who's in charge of the on-demand support at Google headquarters with the espresso book machine, because you can go get an espresso and come back and pick up your book. But I also found really interesting to go visit Trip Adler at Scribd. Scribd stands for scribbled initially. I was there on the 1-year anniversary of Scribd. Scribd's become a real popular place to go. What they were trying to do is provide free books to the world and resources and other kinds of things. It's become monetized since I visited, so people are making money off this. Also adding some audio over the top to all the books, so you could scan or look for different books and listen to the books. But yeah, they're in the South of Market district of San Francisco as well. A lot of things are happening in San Francisco proper, as well as in Palo Alto, in terms of this ebook field. We've built a library of more than 500,000 ebooks, audiobooks, and so forth. And that was as of 10, 14 years ago. So it's going to be 10 times as many today. Now, I'm not even sure if you can find, Bo, you can look up Scribd and see, I think, he just hated the fact that he'd write a paper and the professor would grade it and then it would go in the bin, it would go in the garbage, right? So you can put your papers in Scribd, your love letters in Scribd, genealogical records can go in Scribd. So every written record was going to be eventually the goal or the mission of Scribd, right? So read like you own every book in the world, because you do when you access Scribd. Bo, does Scribd still exist?
Yes, it does.
Okay, does the Global Text Project still exist?
Global Text Project does, but I shot off the updated title and link already in the chat.
Put that, send it to my email later too.
Gotcha.
Yeah, thanks. And then maybe just keep track of all these links. Another entity that sprung up about 15 to 20 years ago is called Flat World Knowledge, which basically were publishers who formed their own book company. They didn't sell books, they sold ebooks, so that you could and in turn read a digital version, they were creating open textbooks, and they were selling services around it. So they were making money on the services that layered around it. Now, David Wiley, who I'll talk about later, who's kind of like the founder of open education in many ways, he's now working for Lumen Learning, Lumen, and that's become kind of the replacement of Flat World Knowledge. So you can look up Flat World Knowledge, you probably won't find anything, but look up Lumen Learning and then give everyone that link. And they're working with Ivy Tech here in Bloomington, or, and we'll talk about that. The research is coming up. And I tried to get John Hilton, also from, David was at BYU, John's at BYU. I was trying to get him to come tonight, but at short notice, I only asked him yesterday. But he'll come next year when and I'll talk about John Hilton's research. I'm going to throw that up here for all of us to take a look at. So Flat World Knowledge was trying to create, as I said, trying to create the norm being a digital book, and then the services wrapped around those books, like assessment and animations and so forth. And then Barnes & Noble got into this by having the Nook, and we had Amazon, had the Kindle, and other entities had their screen readers and so forth. And some of these screen readers would in turn utilize, especially the Kindle, they repurpose them for people in developing world, in parts of Africa, to increase literacy of kids, and putting thousands of books on these. And there was a vice president of Amazon that left Amazon to create an ebook entity for a nonprofit one. Then there's concerns about screen readability and the ink that's put in this, and how much money is being spent on these digital textbooks and so forth. You can see here digital textbook sales were 3% of sales in 2011, growing to 44% by 2017. So it's a big deal when this much is happening. Pearson's in trouble, Houghton Mifflin's in trouble, Alan Bacon is in trouble, Wiley, Rutledge, they're all in trouble because this is all being digitized, and they weren't ready for it. So here's the project, the World Reader Project, repurposing the Kindle into a delivery platform for many books around the world, especially those that are no longer in copyrights. Anything older than 75 years old, like all Shakespearean works and James Joyce and whatever, is available for free. BookRix is a place for mobile books. I had a student in this class wrote a book for our final project and put up in BookRix, enabling you to access things on the fly, no binding, publishing services free. You still get royalties from your book if people download and pay for that app or whatever. Then we had the iPad, and the world changed forever, right? Just like the iPhone changed the world. And a lot of interesting features embedded in the iPad, like highlighting text and annotating text and so forth and so on. And then Korea. So we had California, we had Canada, we had Korea, all these sounding words. The Koreans wanted every book in K-12 education to be digital. They want everything to be available, but they every year met with some resistance. They weren't ready, and every year becomes the year of the ebook in Korea. It's 2015, 2016, 2017. Now they're saying 2026. Okay, Sung Hee will maybe tell us what the real year of the ebook will be, but I visited Korea, and they do have a lot going on there. One of my former students helped create that big ebook project. But one problem, you can contact your teacher at any time on the weekend with questions. And I'm not sure if everyone wants to be contacted. You can put kids in immersive worlds while reading their ebooks and all this kind of stuff. Pretty cool stuff in Daejeon, South Korea, and many other places. One of my former visiting scholars, Mi-Hyung Kim, was supposed to be a visiting scholar, didn't get her visa approved, never came, but her husband came and visited me. He told me about the project. Then we got Paul Kim's Smile Project, and Paul comes to this class every other year. He came last fall, I think, in 622, didn't he, Paul?
Yeah, he was here. He was great.
He was great. So he sent me all sorts of questions. I'm working on a paper with him about question asking. Paul built an AI-based question asking tool and evaluation tool. So kids type a question, it tells you what level of Bloom's taxonomy the question's at in the Stanford Mobile Inquiry Learning Environment, SMILE. My son went with him to Tanzania, to Argentina, and to other places, evaluating the SMILE project. This is in Thailand. The kids are utilizing it there, trying to increase literacy of skills. And again, you got companies who are reacting to all this, and they're trying to update. McGraw-Hill is probably one of the first ones, and more notable ones, but McGraw-Hill's had problems too. But they're trying to create smarter books, whatever that means. Maybe we can ask our guest at 7 what a smarter book means, what a smart world is. And we had other tools come up like Boundless. You can look this up, and OpenStax. OpenStax was created out of Rice University by my friend Richard Beranek, and OpenStax was an OER platform, a repository of books. Merlot is a referatory, a set of links, but OpenStax is a repository of free books. And this is taking off for high school big introductory classes and college introductory classes. So I have some data here later on. I'll talk about OpenStax some more, but you might read about OpenStax from time to time, trying to get free books to high school kids and first couple of years of college and beyond. And of course, the Amazon Kindle is really an e-reading tool itself, and there are many features that are embedded in that to make it more seamless to use. There's also a tool, and you can look this up, Bo, Subtext. Subtext creates social books, so you can read a book and comment on it and have a conversation with other people who are reading the same book and form book fan clubs, if you will, right? So kind of interesting as well there. Let me know if you find it.
It looks like it might have changed names as well to maybe Renaissance.
Renaissance, that makes sense. Yeah, that I did hear something happen to Subtext. I mean, yeah, subtext is maybe not a great word, kind of like, MOOCs isn't a great word. So they had to change eventually. The Open Textbook Project is not just at Rice University in Texas, also it's at Minnesota. The University of Minnesota has an annual conference, I think, on open textbooks issues. And they have partners like Purdue, like Cleveland State, British campus, British Columbia campus, Ohio State. So yeah, we've got all these things happening, open educational resources that are redefining what a textbook means and what it means to learn. And here are some of the publishers that are jumping into the e-textbook project, including Macmillan, including McGraw-Hill, including Cengage, including Wiley, and so forth. And then we want to look at what the effects of these ebooks are. So here we are at Indiana University. I don't know if this was Indiana. This is Indiana too. There's a professor named Alan Dennis. There's a dean we have right now, Anastasia Maroney, Stacy Maroney. My former student, Sadara Bachi. We looked at the ebook project at Indiana and published that in 2016. And you can see IU saved $3.5 million, having 40,000 students at IU of our 90-some thousand across 8 campuses utilizing ebooks. And so they're saving millions and millions of dollars. And we're at 6:30, Bo. About 2 minutes left, right, Bo?
Yep, my alarm has not gone off yet.
So they're saving $3.5 million at Indiana University. You can see this there. And that's our dean. That was her big project as in charge of as VP of digital learning at Indiana. That was one of her projects. Another one's called Active Learning Mosaic Project. So here you can just see the same data over and over. Now it rises to 10 million a couple of years later. So here we've got, huge savings at Indiana, like 8 million, 10 million, 3 million, 4 million. I'm not really sure exactly how many million, but they're saving money, and they are constantly doing these comparisons. And a lot of articles are written, like in EDUCAUSE, which is a huge EDUCAUSE review, which gets huge subscribers, like tens of thousands of all these IT people all around the US read that. University of Houston had a pilot project. One of my former students was in charge of that or helped, and we've got 3 books together on MOOCs and Open Ed. Her name's Mimi Lee. Again, Minnesota was big in this. Kentucky State Universities offers free books to all students. Now, Kentucky's been innovative in the community college settings. They have jumped on this to try and help get more students going to college and enrolling. They've created several projects. I've presented twice down there in their capital now. It's been 10, 15 years since I did. I'm always impressed with Kentucky and what's going on there. It's also a beautiful place to visit if you ever get a chance to.
6:30.
6:30, thank you. So I'm about at the point, thanks, that helps. So we've got a broken textbook project market. They're too much, the cost too much. Students aren't using them, students aren't buying them, students aren't reading them when they do buy them. And so, did textbook costs impact you and how many classes you took? 32%, 1 in 3 students were impacted somewhat, 16% significantly. So almost half of students are impacted because of the cost of textbooks. And you can see the rise over the years just in terms of a calculus book, right? And the average student spending on books, while the books are costing more, they're not spending as much because they're not buying them. They're not even, why do they want ebooks? Well, they're cheaper. They don't, traditional books do not require internet access, which that might make them more advantageous. Students like to write on pages. Well, they might prefer traditional books for certain things. Um, navigating, bookmarking, their eyes don't hurt so much. All these things are negative, actually, aspects for the most part of the ebook market. But 27% preferred ebooks. This is back in 9 years ago, because ebooks are cheaper, lighter. They don't have to be returned. They're searchable. You can change the print size. If you're visually impaired, you can change the font and the brightness and so forth. You can convert them to audio and listen to them. And so, yeah, we've got one nonprofit delivering 10 million e-accessible books called Bookshare. I think Bo looked this up if Bookshare still exists. Now I tried creating Bookstore Share about 15 years ago. Course Share, Bookstore Share, Library Share, all these share sites.
Yep, it's on there.
Yeah, they're trying to help people who have disabilities when they read. So if you're looking for a final project, you might want to take a look at Bookshare and what they're doing and interviewing people who have used it. You can see here in terms of public and private universities, that's 2014, 2015, so maybe we can skip over this. But there are people who are comparing every aspect of this ebook market. And again, it's here's 2016, looking to triple over the next 5 years. And it probably has tripled, as a supplement or as a primary resource for learning. And so what are the deterrents to OER? Well, people can't find them. People don't know what high quality is. People can't determine if it's high enough quality. The other faculty members in your department aren't using them, therefore they're being suspicious if you're using them. That's 10 years ago or 8 years ago. A lot has changed in the past 8 years. Some say it's too difficult to integrate these ebooks. There's no comprehensive catalog for these ebooks. So faculty experience with them, 39% of people 8 years ago never heard of ebooks. 36% knew a little bit about them, but never used them. So mostly people weren't using them. People weren't aware of them in 2016. That has changed, right? And so we had an awareness issue, particularly in the US, not as much in the European countries. In the UK, other data I've seen, it's a huge US issue, probably global issue as well. So awareness is starting to pick up, but not really all that much. I'm just going to skip over a couple of these. We got a copyright, a licensing issue. Are people aware of Creative Commons, where you can put things up for free to the world and share things? The type of text material that's required. Do you have a textbook plus other text in your classes? Don't you use textbooks? Do you use other resources like I'm using, special issues? I'm not even using a textbook. Openly licensed material. Do you use them? No. Most people are not, or they're using other kinds of material. So really openly licensed stuff it's there, but they're not using it. Now you see the authors of this study from Babson is Elaine Allen and Jeff Seaman. I think they got married. I think they're both, last name is Seaman now, but they have many studies for the last 20 years on e-learning, blended learning, OER, and other things that I've assigned in this class. And this is one of many of their articles. Ease of searching open educational resources. 62% don't even know. Some say it's very difficult, but most people don't even know. Reported reasons for not using ebooks include no textbook was available as an ebook in their discipline, poor quality of the open book, lack of time to make the transition. There's all sorts of excuses. Again, this is back in 2016. Most frequently cited purposes of OER, ideas and inspiration. supplementing coursework, preparing for teaching. The same answers would exist for how to use ChatGPT. They'll say, well, I can get ideas and inspiration from ChatGPT. I can supplement my courses with ChatGPT. I can prepare for teaching. Same thing, pretty much. I can say this because I've just collected data that says that on ChatGPT. Most frequently used types of OER, videos, images, and open textbooks. Not so much tutorials, infographics, quizzes. Perceived quality of OER, comparable. This one says it's comparable. Some say slightly worse, some say slightly better. Perceived importance of open licensing, very important, 53%. 22% important. So 3/4 of people say it's important to have things open license. Again, they're difficult to find, no time to look, difficult to locate. I'm going to skip over some of these. You can download this, and this is older data. I want to get to the newer stuff. What time I got 25 minutes. So BC campus. My friend Raj Jangiani, and I can't pronounce that right. If we have someone from India here who could maybe help me out. I think people who might be from India aren't here tonight, but Raj and his wife have a chapter in my MOOCs and Open Education book. He's a leader in British Columbia on open education resources and open textbooks. He's done a number of studies. He's often a keynote. He's a very good speaker. He looked at adoption of open textbooks, creation of open textbooks, adaptation of open textbooks, and why do people use it? Well, it's cost savings, content are two of the big issues in his study. He looked across institutions. My former student, Özgür Özdemir, and I did publish a study on OER in Turkey, but he published a study on OER in California. And this is his study on why people, in his dissertation, he interviewed people, I think 8 to 10 people on OER, and he's been a guest in this class presenting on this. So collaborating with other faculty, using OER for teaching materials and so forth, content savings, cost savings, content uses, and so forth. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. OpenStax I already mentioned, so I don't need to go much, but OpenStax has a philosophy that integrates cognitive science and learning science with IST, technology integration stuff. But you can see some of the reasons why you would use OpenStax, and my friend Richard Berenick provided this graph. We're looking at the cost of textbooks compared to the cost of new homes, compared to the cost of medical care, compared to consumer prices, and the highest one is textbooks, and students are trillion in debt, $1 trillion in debt. And so why is textbooks? Well, yeah, 50% of community colleges use financial aid. They could, help out their students by adopting these textbooks. They're finding at OpenStax an increase in graduation rates, an increase in persistence, an increase in, innovation, in faculty flexibility, and so forth. These are some of the books at OpenStax: astronomy, biology, microeconomics, macroeconomics, physics, algebra, and so forth. He presented with me back in November 2016 when I was at the University of Houston. Richard and I presented back to back, I think, that day. So you can see some of the books that are up there and what they'll have a description of it, they'll have ratings of it, and so forth. Washington State is another one that's experimenting a lot with open textbook. That's where Bill Gates' mother went to school, and Bill Gates gave a lot of money to Washington State. You see again here from the Indiana University newsroom, cost savings again, cost savings over time at IU. Again, you can see the e-textbook update at IU. OpenStax now have a tutor within their textbooks, so they're adding elements to these open textbook systems and features that will help you with your homework, help you with the practice you're learning, spacing out the practice, getting feedback, and so forth. I'm going to skip a bit of this just to help us. Again, Seaman and Seaman, they got married, that she changed their name. And you can see here the proportion of faculty requiring particular materials for their courses. Most faculty have textbooks. back in 2017, articles, videos, software, but they're expensive. And they're, students aren't buying them, and in all disciplines, health, social sciences, professional areas, education, business. And again, we have an awareness problem still exists in 2016, 17. So I think I'll skip over most of this one so I can get to some of these other aspects here. Chegg is another one you might recognize, you might have heard of, providing textbook support and free tutoring services and other things. Merlot's a website where it's a set of free objects that are links. You can find things in anthropology, zoology, medicine, education. I've been studying Merlot for a long, long time. People put up free stuff at Merlot. Merlot stands for Multimedia Education Resource and Learning online teaching or something like that. It was created in California, like most things are. eCampus Ontario is not California. It's up in Toronto or up in Ontario. My friend David Porter helped create the eCampus Ontario, BBC Campus, Open Ed. They have summits in Canada. Again, Canada, California, Korea are the big players in this space of open textbooks. You might want to attend one of these open education conferences. There's David Porter's name, Beyond Free. Harnessing the resonant value of open and collaborative practices for the public good, Beyond Free. That's Open Ed Ontario. That's David Wiley on the right. That's David Porter on the left. Both have been heavily involved in ebook projects. David Wiley in America, David Porter in Canada. David Porter was originally in BBC and moved to Ontario, where I last saw him, and we presented together, actually. So there's 5 openness kind of principles. You have the right to retain, to make, own, and control copies of the content, to reuse. You have the right to use the content in a range of ways. You have a right to revise and adapt and modify. You have a right to remix the content into other open education contents and redistribute and share with others. Retain, reuse, revise, remix, redistribute, the 5 R's. So trying to provide a public good. What is an open textbook? An open textbook is a license under an open copyright license and made available freely to students and teachers and members of the world out in the general public, according to David Porter. And some of the funders of these open textbook projects include the Hewlett Foundation, include the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Shuttleworth Foundation, Open SUNY, and other kinds of things where you can get principles of sociology and see that there are 150 textbooks at some of these sites in Canada with 31 institutions, 20,000 students. That's, again, as of 8 years ago or 6 years ago. That's just an example of people utilizing it. You can see that 60% of students do not purchase textbooks at some point due to cost. 35% take fewer courses due to cost. 31% choose not to register due to cost. 23% go regularly without a textbook due to cost. You can see that this is huge ramifications societally, individually, institutionally, pragmatically. So, why aren't, what's wrong with your textbook? Well, it's the wrong edition. It's out of stock. I can't get a loan to buy the book, all on and on and on. I guess I'm going to skip over some of this to see if I can finally get to the new stuff, because I got 10 minutes left here. So here we go. I think this is it. Well, okay. 13 reviewed studies by my friend Rajiv, 119,000 students, 95% said they had the same or better outcomes with the ebook. When they're comparing open books to traditional books, ebooks are often winning out in the studies that are being conducted. There's cost savings, there's greater access, students are completing the courses, students are enrolling in more courses, they're feeling better about their classes, their self-efficacy goes up as a result. Rajiv has a book, I think with his wife, called Open. the philosophy and practices that are revolutionizing education and science. So if you're interested in learning more, I think it might be a free download. And then David Wiley with Lumen Learning I mentioned earlier, and what Lumen, again, providing OER adoption support and assessment support and other kinds of things, and their catalog at Lumen Learning. They're working closely with Washington State, as it says. They're working closely with a lot of community colleges. I'm going to skip over. CogBooks is another one providing AIs, tools within the books to look at student structures of learning and that kind of thing. Smart Sparrow is another one. Bo, look up Smart Sparrow. I think it went out of business, but I think I'm wrong on that. I'm curious. And CogBooks, see if both of them are still around. I'm going to skip over these little infographics on books. You've got, 3,990 US schools using open textbooks as of 6 years ago, 100 countries, 1,170 non-US schools. Bo, did you find?
Yeah, it looks like Smart Sparrow has been acquired by Pearson. So they're still, the site is still active.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming there's not going to be that free aspect of it any longer. And CogBooks is still here as well.
Yeah, that's exactly what I learned too. Great. Thank you for that. 6.2 million students as of 2018 were using the open books from OpenStax. They're using these free high school and college intro books. Again, decrease in student price costs of getting an education. And faculty are starting to embrace them. There's a change happening. They're starting to choose these digital books like I did in this class or have done in this class. I need to skip over some of these. Sorry about that. More students. You can see the increase from 2013 to 2016. And the cost savings, 5 million across 38 community college and so forth. But professors aren't fully embracing it as of 8 years ago. Attitudes are changing. Okay, let me I think I'm getting to the point where, again, I presented on the University of Minnesota open textbooks. I had that up already. Okay, Houston's got an open text. And then the federal government. A couple years ago, the federal government jumped in on this and said, hey, we're going to fund one interesting project. And it went to California, I think like in Sacramento, or so the University of Sacramento got to experiment with ebooks. Yeah, the Federal Register. Applications for new awards, funds for the improvement of post-secondary education, open textbooks pilot project. The problem was they didn't provide a lot of money. It was only enough for 1 or 2 experimental sites. And then we've got the Skills Commons. I'll let you look up that for workforce training and adult education for open textbook kinds of things. LibreText awarded 5 million to, this is the one that got the $5 million, LibreText, and worked with the University of Sacramento on this. Okay. Da, 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 da. Then there was a $1,000 open textbook project that got a lot of attention. It was a mistake. There's something called Talk to Books where you can actually have a conversation, and then this rich digital library can access any books that relate to that and call them up. It's kind of like ChatGPT, or an early version of ChatGPT 6 years ago. I'll maybe skip over Talk to Books. It was kind of interesting. If you go to this website, click on this, and just the conversations that you could have kind of was leading to the state that we're at today. Okay, again, there's Stacy Maroney, our dean, talking about open access to books. Okay, here, John Hilton sent me this today, and he was on my panel in 2018 looking at open educational resources, and he says you get what you pay for. Okay. There's a dearth of empirical research on the use of open textbooks, and so John Hilton and David Wiley started to do some research on community college, in particular Tidewater Community College. And there's a study that was published on Tidewater Community College and how much money they were able to save and help students increase their grades, increase their throughput, lower their dropout rate, lower their withdrawal rates. They looked at face-to-face students compared to online students, and the online fared fairly well. And they were talking over 40,000 or over 30,000 students in their study. So it's a big study, again, looking at dropout rates, withdrawal rates, final grades, and you can see the improvement between the face-to-face and the OER version. Less dropouts, less withdrawals in the online e-textbook version, higher grades, and greater course to completion, CTR. What is that? CTR, course throughput rate. CTR is course throughput rate. It's not a word I used a lot. They had 22 peer-reviewed studies, 183,000 students. 95% said we're doing better with these ebooks. They looked at, some studies had treatment control comparisons, some did not. In there, 24 peer-reviewed studies looked at perceptions of quality, 12,990 professors and students. 90% of professors and students said OER is better than traditional. Okay. And so we're starting to get the word out. You can see here the middle number is the cost. The right-hand number is the OER cost. The middle number is the physical cost. The left-hand number is the savings. So savings in terms of these textbooks at Tidewater College when they adopted OER, huge amounts of savings. And go to Lumen Learning and learn more about this. But there's a need for more studies. I'll skip over this. Again, Seaman and Seaman, many freeing the textbook. They have another study looking at freeing now we're starting to get more awareness than we had previous years, and you can take a look at their study results. I want to get to the next part here. So in the monster syllabus, there was an article from 2019 from Hong Lin at the University of Oklahoma, Teaching and Learning Without a Textbook. They looked at undergraduate student perceptions of OER. I've got 10 minutes, not 8 minutes. The theoretical framework for OER, participatory technologies, you can chat, you can have discussions, you have wikis, you can have conversations, you can have blogs. There's more people, openness, more sharing, more connections with each other about what you're learning, more creativity, innovation happening in this ebook space. More sharing of ideas and resources in and amongst others in a connected community, more learner-centered, more reflective, and so forth. The advantages of open textbooks and open resources, cost savings, dynamic. You can always change the materials, get new updates, different kinds of support to evaluate students' learning. The disadvantages include slow connection times, the lack of textile kinds of experience or smelling the book. There's actually a scent. There's actually a scent bow that you can get and put into your computer in the USB port that emits odors of an old book. So as you're reading an ebook, you can smell an old book. I'm not
No
sure.
way.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I want that, but
That's incredible.
there's a lot of cool stuff happening out there, really. So yeah, so unclear guidance in using the books, insufficient self-regulation. Another article in the monster syllabus was this one, open to open exploration of textbook preferences, and strategies to offset book costs. They're looking at 363 traditionally taught, 203 open education students on campus, and then traditional online learning. And they have just a really interesting study where they're comparing 4 groups. Those are learning face-to-face and online with ebooks or physical books kinds of things. And, they ask students, compare the strategies they typically use. Most bought used copies, most rented, and so forth. And so they're trying to save money by getting the old version of the book kind of thing. Or they didn't buy the book. And so they got poorer grades because they didn't buy the book. They took fewer courses, the same blah, 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 same kinds of things. The preferences, the reasons they prefer printed books, they're more convenient. You can write on them. They're easier to move to different sections of the book. You can keep the printed copy for later use. The reasons for digital, it can be accessed anywhere. It's more environmentally friendly, more green, easier to move to different, so both say it's easier to use for physical and more cost effective. So ratings of the importance of the textbooks, well, the access is a critical issue, price is a critical issue, convenience, and so forth. Now, my study, I'm going to wrap up finally with my study. I got 5 minutes left. It's actually not even come out. IU doesn't even recognize it until it's officially got page numbers. If it's came out online first last year, actually a little over a year ago, 2022, it's not official till we get the volume number and page numbers. But it's interactive learning environments, which sometimes takes 3 years from online first to the physical version. Things are getting ridiculous. But my friends in China, Turkey, and South Africa asked me to help them on this article. So I was like the last person they asked to help out, and I did help them out. And so we looked at what are the studies, 123 empirical studies on ebooks. What are they saying are the advantages of ebooks? What kinds of studies are being done? What are the issues in terms of challenges of these ebooks? What are people studying in terms of the challenges or in terms of the preferences? And so we looked, there are certain inclusion and exclusion criteria. We looked at peer-reviewed journal articles. We looked at empirical studies on ebooks. We looked at studies presenting detailed results, not overviews, not glossy overviews. So we initially had all these thousands of studies that we found, 1,991 studies initially, but when you start looking at duplicated records, you start excluding those that aren't an empirical study. We start excluding certain things that didn't fit, the ebook field that really weren't, they were misleading. We're down to 123 that were really comparable, which is what happens in some of these. And then we started coding these by research methods, by the educational level, the design of the study, where it was published, what aspects of education was it in. And so you can see over time, there's been an increase overall. You can kind of discount the 2021 because we really cut that off halfway through the year, I think, in 2021. And so you can just look through 2020. It's pretty much going up in terms of ebooks, most of them happening in China, Australia, Canada, and the US, and South Africa. In Finland, a great place that I love to visit. But yeah, South Africa, China, Canada, Germany, UAE, another place I love to visit, Taiwan. But then where they're published, Computers in Ed, Journal of Computing in Higher Ed, Journal of Dental Education, Journal of Dental, 4 studies. Well, what the heck? Why is dental education interested in ebooks? So that was kind of interesting to me. Technical Services Quarterly, kind of bizarre. Computers and Human Behavior, where I post one of my first studies. Good journal. And then you look at what kind of books these and studies these were. Well, natural science and math, big ones. The big ones. Education, 11%, but natural science, math, and statistics, 61%. So we can see, I'm sorry, take that back. 61% is not known. Natural science is 11, arts and humanities are 3. I told you I'd make a couple mistakes. Social science is 7%, health is 8, education is just 3, and business is 7%. What do they focus on? 112 of these studies were focused on the student. 8 were focused on the educator, or 6 on the teacher, 2 on the doctor. And then the distribution of students by education level. 76% of these studies were higher ed, 10% were secondary. And then they're mostly quantitative or mixed method studies. Very, very quantitative. They're saving money. They're looking at the quantitative things. They're not interviewing people. They're not focus groups. Questionnaires, survey data. Pretty much a lot of these are questionnaires, computer log data. A few are doing interviews, 26 of them. And then they look at, are they using ebooks during class? They're using ebooks before class. They're using before and after class. Before, during, and after class. Did not use ebooks in any, kind of thing. So then, starting to look at, what are the different categories here of the distribution of studies according to design features. So are they looking at mobile books? Are they looking at web-based books? Are they looking at passive interaction? Are they looking at participant level 4 students talking to each other, commenting on each other? So are they looking at feedback issues? Are they looking at learning analytics? What are the issues in the research in these ebook studies? Are they looking at openness as a concept? So all sorts of kinds of studies are being done here. And then the psychological variables, engagement, motivation, attitude, critical thinking, or the behavioral things like learning outcomes, like skill acquisitions, like participation and talking. So what are the variables being looked at in these studies? And then if they're looking at students, what is it within the students that they're concerned about? I'm sorry, here. I've got something blocking my screen, so I'm trying to pull this down. There we go. Oh. So in terms of students, I'm looking at anxiety, fatigue. I'm looking at distractions. If they're looking at teachers, they're looking at the time management issue or the anxiety teachers are feeling. If they're looking at technologies, they're looking at battery life, they're looking at screen size, they're looking at the internet connectivity or cost. They're looking at design, they're looking at access and navigation issues, usability, and then licensing. These are the kinds of, number one was unfamiliarity of the textbook, of the e-textbook, right? And then my team in this doing this study included Ahmad at Beijing Normal University and others, his colleagues there, also people from UC Irvine and so forth, and my friend Araz Bazkurt from Turkey, and Rongwei Huang from Beijing Normal, the #1 e-learning guy in all of China. And so the world is open. So that's a lot. I told you it was a lot. That's fresh off the press, a lot of those studies. That first time I've talked about, about a quarter of that. So hopefully you can kind of get a sense of a topic that we're not even going to talk about this semester. I mean, this field of emerging learning technologies is quite diverse. We got 15 weeks with 15 special issues, but yet we're not even reading about ebooks. You think about that, what we're not covering in here or sufficiently. It's hard to get all these different topics, especially when you and I want to talk about AI. So for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, we're talking about AI. But what did I have to give up? Well, ebooks is one of the things I had to give up as a result. And there are other things as well. So part of the reason I provided this 1-hour primer on the history of ebooks is to kind of give you an update as to where the research is today, but also give you a backdrop, the history of ebooks and the players in the ebook space and who is providing the research and what topics are they concerned about and where are they going next? What is happening next? So I think, and I hope OpenStax and all these other ebook projects I've mentioned along the way tonight, including the Indiana project, saving millions of dollars, including Lumen Learning and all that. Hopefully, you got something you can use from this. Before we go to Quay, because he's here, he's been waiting patiently for a couple minutes, could you put in the chat window just 3 words or thoughts, some thoughts from the section I gave for the last hour on ebooks, or questions for me, or anything you would like to put in there that I'll address on the side, because we'll want to get to Quay here, and I want to open up my chat window. We've got a lot in the chat that I haven't even read yet. A lot there. Glad to see Xiaojing Ko is here, my former advisee, now faculty at Indiana. Glad to have others of you. Thank you, Jill, my visiting scholar. Thank you, Lena, my visiting scholar, and Alicia. And Sung Hee, all 4 visiting scholars are here, Bo. And I think Charan might be here because I see Emily's otter is here, or maybe this is Emily's otter pilot sharing everything. Esther is now joining us from a science conference in Denver, Colorado. So welcome, Esther. It's good to have you join us. Anyone want to make a final comment before we switch over to Quay? Bo, you get the final comment then.
Oh, this was probably the most links that I've gathered in such a short duration here. But Dr. Bonk, we came up with kind of a nice little solution tonight where we took all of the links, we categorized them in a spreadsheet, and we're going to go ahead and continue to do that and grow that throughout the rest of the semester here. So thank you for all those links. And it sounds like all of us have some interesting feelings when it comes to ebooks.
Since you've been my TA for a couple of semesters, I know you can get a joke. There's been a lot of links there, but you didn't lose any hair over it.
Thank goodness I didn't have much hair to lose.
So I'm going to stop the recordings and restart it. So this has been week 10, part 1 on ebooks. And hopefully you can download the slides and the PDF of the slides and ask me some questions later on. So thanks for joining part 1, week 10, R678, spring of 2024.